should have went for one.
Is there a particular side I should be sitting on?
I don't know.
We're gonna have room for anybody from Trash Truck. We got Randy Kindig and Peter.
4 seats. You need another chair?
No.
We'll see. I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, we need one more chair. We have to just roll another chair.
Oh, they're open. Yeah.
I'm not sure how round the round table is.
Yeah, we're the round table.
We need a round table.
We need one of those 360-degree cameras.
Yeah.
Well, they have them over in the banquet room, actually. It's upstairs.
Oh, after hauling that Model 12 and on that tour.
Because I can sit also on one.
Honestly, it doesn't appear anybody home is back for getting dinner, so.
So you got to represent it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's only the last 4 or 5 hours. So.
I don't remember if I turned the other camera on.
I was wondering.
No.
Okay.
Really, she didn't sign that. Yeah.
Just put on your red set first.
Have me a jacket and coat, so don't get liquored up.
Alright.
Mr. Peter, MC Ian, Mr. Randy.
Randy, Ian, and Pete.
Oh, we eat them.
All right. We're gonna need me, I'll see you.
Oh, we do now. We do. I don't know how long.
That's your true hacker.
Hopefully. Is that a pseudonym?
Nope.
No? Did you ever be raised in
On my passport, it's on my license.
Oh.
Were you raised by a tiger?
No. And it wasn't, this all depends on, who you're talking to.
Yeah.
No, clearly my mother was a fan. I got the better of the deal. My brother was Tigger. He doesn't use that name anymore.
Yeah. Could have been Shere Khan.
Tigger was probably pretty cool for a
Yeah.
while.
I would actually hope for Bagheera.
Yeah.
And if we're really going for something, Bagheera was really the coolest name.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's not bad. All your childhood pictures are you doing all one cloth?
No.
Wrestling with livestock or something?
No.
That'd be funny.
So how'd you guys do in the auction in the end?
We did well.
Good.
Very well.
Oh, here's Mike Brandt called. Hey dude, wake up. Hey dude, wake up, man.
No, I'm going to do that. I mean, that's not part of our shtick. This one become the last Tandy assembly.
Yeah.
Apparently it does. People don't get the joke.
Well, certain best people.
So we don't have to put the word last in quotes when we talk about Tandy assembly then, right?
No, you don't. Please don't. Unless you're referring to last year.
Yeah, right. That's good.
Round table looks like a square.
Rectangle.
Oblong.
Coco's on this side.
I was even thinking we should all everybody sit over here and just put the camera that way and we just all talk. But we'll figure it out.
I don't know if you actually have a round table in here.
Yeah, that would be good too.
Put the camera on the spinning.
Just let it go around.
Like in the 70s show when they're smoking pot.
Oh, yeah.
We don't necessarily need to pass around a microphone, right? I think since we're the only noise being generated in here, that should be fine.
Right.
We're louder, we would be on podcast.
Right. Rick,
Hey,
how are you?
pretty good.
How did bomb threat? Does bomb threat now sold out?
I don't know.
No, it's not. It's
Few
not
left?
sold out.
Few left.
There are several left.
Okay. We need to remedy that. Your booth babes weren't working overtime?
Okay, thanks. It's easy. I just called Pete, says they're walking anywhere. It must have been a little restriction. It was hard to get in anywhere.
Yeah. Apparently, college football is a big thing here.
Oh, God, I just went for dinner at the steakhouse.
Yeah.
They were all watching that game. It was the highest blow the hell out of Maryland. It's like 77
Oh,
to 7.
it was when we were having dinner. It was like 40 to 7.
It's
And
like 67
And like
to
5:30, we were having dinner. Wait, was this it? Cheers.
Thank you. You know, like the 6809 running on a stable 5-volt power supply. Mike and Lamell distilled till 510 with square feet.
I was threatening to take him to the auction leftovers and just load them up in your car,
Oh,
but they managed to get disappeared.
oh, good. My wife would not have appreciated that.
Dude, wake up. I love it. TA Vintage Events, Inc. TA Vintage Events.
I know.
Is that the end of the story? Is there more to it?
Well, she actually seemed interested in the computer.
It's our escort.
She wasn't just tagging along because she was married to someone interested in computers. She seemed.
Because she was patient.
Needs are on the way. I finally don't have Randy's
But
number.
she seemed kind of a little
I just
shy.
called Pete.
I never got a chance to
Anybody got Randy's number?
I don't have that.
find out what she was.
Pete's with right.
I thought so. I thought they were
Yeah,
now.
whether
He said he didn't know Randy's.
Oh, okay.
Maybe she's still around.
Holy crap, I missed out on Junkman today.
Interested in this subject.
The math.
Yeah, I gotta get the map in there.
That's right. I think about it. 100.
Okay, Randy has bowed out, he said.
Right.
Randy sent an email.
I think the reason I like computers is because they don't judge, they don't say you're stupid, they say you're wrong. But they say you're stupid.
So we're missing anybody else?
all the time.
It's a system to figure out when you can get. It's a fair system. If you just can figure out where you want to go. That's it. It's there. Yeah, it's the one that I have. Yeah. Look at what you did. What is wrong with you?
If you can know the difference between a logic shift right and an arithmetic shift right.
We're here. All right. Hello, everybody. We're going to kick it off.
Let's shoot it.
Okay, so I would like to call together the first ever Tandy Talk. So we are here to talk about Tandy. I was usually on Saturday I'm doing with my friends Coco Talk, and we're here. So your regularly scheduled Coco Talk has been preempted by Tandy Assembly, and I had basically asked that there would be an opportunity for us to do some type of discussion during Tandy Assembly, and here we are. And we've got a bunch of podcasters and other international celebrities with us here too, which is great too. And we have all of you guys here. So for all of you who have come to Tandy Assembly and who are here now joining us in Tandy Talk, give yourselves a round of applause because this is it's been an exhausting and amazing 18 hours. It feels like we've been here. How long has it been? It feels like we've been here 18 hours today. So it's been a great day, and I'm hoping that we can all just talk about. We're going to, of course, introduce everybody who's up here, but I was hoping we can all just kind of talk about this shared experience we're having here today, Tandy Assembly. You know, what brought you here? What have you liked about being here? What are you still looking forward to seeing while you're here? I'm Steve Strobridge, and if you missed my 30 minutes of fame earlier today, I do color computer gameplay videos and other retro things on YouTube. I also host Coco Talk, which is a weekly live talk show, which is now also a podcast. And I'm a big fan of my own, the Coco Crew podcast, and the Trash Talkers, and Floppy Days. A lot of great content out there in the community. So I'm done saying who I am. And the reason why I'm here is because Tandy is what got me started in computers, got me started in my career, and got me wanting to do YouTube to celebrate all those kind of things. So other than that, I don't care. When we work our way down the line, everybody say who you are, name, rank, serial number type thing, or
Yeah, start with Pete.
Pete.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Peter Bartlett. I'm one of the Trash Talk podcasters. I'm what Randy Kindig, who unfortunately isn't here, would call a TRS-80 Model 1 enthusiast. So I got started in TRS-80 computers back at an early age and got very interested in that, and sort of picked up later in life in the mid-2000s when my mom sent me my old Model 1 keyboard, and I started building add-on devices for that, and that sort of snowballed into a little bit of a business, which, I've been branching out into more originally the Model 3, the Model 4, and so forth line, and now I'm starting to even get into the Coco thing, thanks to the influence of these guys. And I'm just finding a whole lot of fun branching out and learning new things.
Yeah, thanks. We're glad you're here. Looking forward to seeing more of your exhibits.
Ian Maverick from Australia. Still
You're
pretty
right.
tired and a bit jet lagged. Out here, but the things we do. But I thought it's been a really good, well-designed event, and I'm hoping that they will that there'll be future ones, and that we can get more of the enthusiasts from around the United States to come along to these things. I've got some ideas on how to increase the numbers and stuff. But I think this event has a great future. I started out with these computers when my parents bought me one in the 70s, and I've sort of never been really far away from them. Though obviously there's a big lull for a while there. There wasn't much interest in retro computing, but once I noticed there was an interest starting to emerge in the retro computing hobby, I thought, well, this gives me a chance to sort of do my bit to keep the TRS-80 name alive. It wasn't the biggest name in computers in Australia. That was probably mostly catered for by Commodore and Apple. So, but having said that, I have a lot of people who are interested in what I do and the way that I do things and the way that I support the community with my projects and just general advice and support and things like that. So yeah, that's what I do. It's not a main income or anything like that. It's just kind of something I do to give a bit back and try and if people can buy the things that they're after to keep their interest in the hobby going, then that's the important thing. Yeah.
Your shirt clip just came up. Cufflink or something?
My cufflink.
Whoa.
I'm done.
Hey everybody, I'm Peter Satinsky. I'm the host of the TRS-80 Trash Talk podcast. And I am blown away by the attendance and the enthusiasm in the community. It's way beyond my expectations when we originally started planning this a year or so ago. I mean, it's like, right? This is like a living room. So, really happy with it. Unlike probably everybody in this room, I didn't have a TRS-80 when I was a kid. I didn't grow up with a TRS-80. I'm a newcomer just over the past couple of years. I was a Commodore, VIC-20 kid, and I got into the Atari line for a while. And I think when I got into retro computing a few years ago, I got a VIC-20, I got an Atari, a PAD, and I got a TRS-80. And for some reason, I got drawn to the TRS-80 platform. So I think I'm realizing what you guys found out when you were young. What is it, the magic about it? I'm not sure, but it really attracted me. And I think part of it is the fact that it's all new to me, which is exciting. I learned everything there was to learn about the Atari and the Commodores. And everything I'm learning about the TRS-80 now, to me, is new. The programs, the architecture, coding for them, all the different models. So it's really been an exciting time.
My name's Neil Blanchard, everybody, or Neil Brookings, as some people call me.
Neil Brookings!
I'm the co-host and editor of the Coco Crew podcast. The Coco 3 was my first computer, called Computer 3. I got back into it back in 2005. Then 2010 went to Coco Fest, met these guys, and here we are today. And what amazes me with this community is that we're all brought together for pretty much the same thing. These old computers, which is pretty amazing.
It is cool. It definitely is. So, so I'm John Linville, and I'm again one of the hosts of the Coco crew. And let's see, I'm also the organizer for the Retro Challenge event. If you aren't aware of Retro Challenge, go check out retrochallenge.org. The event is running now. It's not too late to enter if you have an idea. Anyway, with that plug in, so like a lot of people, that was my start with computers. Is mostly Tandy after a brief brush with an Apple II in school, but they took me to Tandy Computer Center for some classes in BASIC, and my dad was a ham radio guy and CB guy. Of course, he spent a lot of time at Radio Shack, so it's a natural choice that he picked a Radio Shack computer to bring home for me. And have a little singing part on a recent Coco Crew podcast. It's a parody of a country song, but I had something in there about I hacked the blackjack program to give the dealer 5 cards. Well, that's a true story. There's a demo program that the dealer itself it was blackjack, but the dealer would only deal twice, even though he'd deal up to 5 times to you. So my dad challenged me to change it, and I eventually figured it out, and that was like the beginning of the hacking bug or whatever. So anyway, so I owe a lot to Radio Shack and the Tandy line of computers for what's become a very comfortable living for me and my family, and whatever. Now that after spending many years going to Coco Fest, I really enjoyed it from a hobby perspective and from the networking and community perspective. And several of us that go just kind of, we wanted a little more, and we talked about it off and on, and trying to figure out how to expand it. And at some point, we wanted to expand, but we didn't want to lose that kind of community focus or whatever. And at some point, it dawned on us that, well, maybe we could, instead of including every old computer, maybe we could just include the Tandys, And about that time, the Trash Talk podcast was starting to gain a little steam or whatever, so we kind of reached out to them, and they were amenable to the idea, and we've been a good team, I think. And this event today is beyond my wildest imagination, really. I would have been happy if there were 30 people here, and there's easily twice that. And so it's a great event, and I hope it continues.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm Mike Rowan, also known as Myro.
It has caught
on.
Myro.
I'm a co-host of the Coco Crew podcast. I do parody commercials and bits for the audio bits for the podcast. Sometimes I guest appear on the Trash Talk show with a couple of ads for them as well. Yeah, we're really delighted. We're so happy everybody made it out here. I think the last count we had 76 people here today.
Nice.
So it's a really great turnout. And we can't believe everybody's generosity with the auction. You saw the huge pile of stuff, and that most of that came from all of you. So that has definitely secured doing this again next year. So we're looking forward to that. As far as computers, when I was 13, my dad brought home, I think that was probably 1978, 78, 79. He brought home a TRS-80 Model 1, Level 2, 16K. He even sprang for the extra keypad.
Nice.
And then he never got to use it again. Because I lived on that computer all through high school, learned a program on it, got into machine language on the ZAD, and that kind of launched my career. When I left home, I joined the Air Force, and it was time for me to get my own computer. I decided to upgrade to a color computer. And I was in the 80s, one of my primary jobs was doing Unix system administration, security administration, and with my color computer, I often would use it when we ran shorter terminals. I'd bring it into work and use it as a terminal at work. I was a heavy OS 9 user because it was very Unix-like. I had the UUCP package, so when I had my Coco at home, I could exchange files with work. If I needed to update a configuration file, I could just pull it down with UUCP on my Coco, edit it, push it back out, and it saved me the the 20-30 minute drive to work often. So it was a great tool and a computer I love. But all the Radio Shack computers, that whole line, I kind of grew up with them, and the Pocket computers and the Model 100s, and it's just great to have an event where it could just be about all those computers, because there's just kind of they've got some common link there with Radio Shack and Tandy, and yeah, it's been a great event, and I appreciate everybody making the effort to come out here. It's been a blast.
Yeah. How much experience did you have over the years with the Tandy 10?
With the Tandy 10? 0.
Obviously, that's an inside joke. You want to fill in the blanks?
Somebody asking about the Tandy 10.
Tandy 10.
Yeah, the Tandy 10's a real thing, but no, I've not seen one in person.
It's a shame that the Tandy 11 never came out. That's awesome. So for everybody who's here, if you want to, I don't know if you want to take turns, but just want to yell it out. Like, what was the motivating factor that says, I want to come to this thing? I want to check this thing out.
I'll tell you, with me, it was, I grew up, Jay, I'm from Maryland. I grew up with the Radio Shack. I mean, I'm almost sure half the people here did too. I mean, some form of it. I did it. I had taken a course in basic programming at college as an elective to get out of my senior year. For the price, I picked it up, took it home, took it out of the box, started typing in some commands, and next thing you know, I had a program running. And I could not go to sleep at night. I was so excited. And I kept up with it. It helped me develop programs. There were programs for hospitals. I was a pharmacist and sold some software to hospitals, and it was just, it was fun.
Right.
It was, and I didn't want to make a lot of money. I was a pharmacist, so I was making fairly good income. But then I just noticed that it started to go down a little, and down a little, down a little, and it just seemed to get quieter. And I didn't know what to do with it. If I want to keep my machine, or if I wanted to get rid of it, well, I sold it.
Yeah.
And I sold it for a ridiculously low amount of money because I figured it's got no value.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, I see a revitalization on eBay and emails and stuff like that. And then you run into people like Ian, and you run into other people like Peter, and you find out that, hey, this machine is not dead.
Yeah.
And that revitalized me, and I said, I've got to go to this convention because it shows that there's some interest out there still for a machine that was 35.
Sure. Is this your first vintage computing festival ever?
Yeah.
Or, yeah? And how did you find out about Tandy Assembly? What was it, the trash?
Yeah, I don't know where I heard it, but I guess I just found it in a link somewhere.
Okay.
Or somewhere, and I then posted it on the VCF website to say, hey, does anybody know about this thing and what's going on with it? And I got some responses, and I was amazed at the turnout. I really was.
Yeah, it's
but like
cool.
I say, when you actually get to see the people that you're talking to on the computer, ordering parts or whatever, that's the experience. And then the fact that you have very good lecturers come in, French.
Yeah.
I mean,
great speakers. Yeah.
I mean, you have an extremely good group. And I'm looking for Scott Adams tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do that, I think the interest will stay there. That's
and so, what do you have now? You have
I have about 12 Model 3s. I have parts coming out. My second room in my apartment is nothing but computer parts and computers. I got 4 models ready to run. I do like Ian does. I just buy them offline, tinker with them, fix them, and then resell them. And that's the pleasure I get out of it. Keep it going.
Yeah.
I mean, these are viable machines,
That's awesome.
And they sell. They sell.
That was a great host discussion on collecting and when is too much and how do you control. Do you have a protocol in place for making sure you don't collect too much?
Actual answer.
I went nuts. I really did. Every time I saw a Model 3 or a Model 4 or a Model 4D on the web, I said, I'm going to try and get it. There was 2-3 sales that I got where I got bummers. I didn't get what I was supposed to get, but I got a nice little selection of machines.
Yes.
And then, of course, Ian and his crew come out with all these wonderful devices for it.
It's amazing, yeah.
I mean, a TRC Model 1, whoever envisioned a 4K Model 1 with a little connector and a card has it's a hard drive machine. It's inconceivable. And so that's my 2 cents.
That's awesome. Anybody else want to chime in on what Scott?
Yeah, sure. I've been participating in the Facebook group, and I've jumped on your Discord. And I had been eyeing going to one of the festivals like Coco Fest, but it's at a bad time of year for me, so I haven't made it down there. So I've been looking at that for years. And I've been eyeing going to Kansas Fest, but again, bad time of year for me, so I can't go. And then I saw Tandy Assembly is in the fall when I have time and I have money, and thought, it's the first one. I have to go. I can't ever say that I went to the first one.
Exactly. I've missed 24 Coco Fest before I came to 25, so I didn't know they existed. You know?
I came down here not really knowing what to expect. I heard some of the stories from Coco Fest and all the other festivals, but I didn't know what I was going to find, and it's been super exciting just to be in a room with 60 other people who are all talking about this old computer. In my friend group, nobody else owned one. I had one when I grew up, and they've been like, yeah, I heard of that, but then they just don't care. So being able to be in a room with people who are like, know far more than I do about it and want to talk about it all day, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I agree. Very cool. Anybody else want to chime in on what brought you here?
Yeah. I'm here because, to be honest, but I started collecting. I was actually talking to him not too long ago, and I was just collecting because I wanted to. You know, I've got Apple stuff and computer stuff, and I even got some Commodore stuff, which I never had, just to have Commodore stuff and play with it. But I didn't realize there was like a community for it. Like I was just collecting to collect because I wanted to have the equipment. And then I don't remember if I happened upon Steve's stuff first or your guys' stuff, but it was one of the two, and then kind of together. And I'm just like, wow, there's actually people who care about this crap. Like, it's just amazing that, like, not only do people care about it, but like these guys are making new hardware. Like, it's just, it's amazing. It really is. And then, you know, they kind of like he said, like April's just a bad time of year for me, so Coco Fest is kind of out work-wise. So when you guys make October, I'm like, I'm going to that.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
You know, there's a certain amount of if you build it, there will come aspect to it. And it's like we talked about doing this, and people said, well, I mean, Chicago's in the middle of the country. Why would you go somewhere in the middle of nowhere to have an event? Who the hell's going to go to Southeast Ohio? You know, why would anybody go there? We've already got an event.
Like 4 hours. So.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? There's people that are closer. Why would anybody go there? We already have Coco Fest. You know, nobody wants to go to 2 events a year. It's nothing, you know, and so much of it clearly is wrong. I mean, I see a lot of faces that I see at Coco Fest. I see a lot of faces I've never seen before or I've only seen on Facebook. Just right there says, well, we're feeling the need that somebody wanted to go to 2 events and somebody couldn't make it to Coco Fest, right? That's right there. So, you know, sometimes you just have to ignore what people are saying or not saying or what, you know, people think is a dumb thing.
At some point, right?
But, I mean, you had a good point too. You said these are our hot rods. And it's like, well, I mean, I definitely have a lot of friends that do hot rods. I love it. I think it's great. But, I mean, they spend just as much or more money on their hot rods than I spend on this. And they drive them a lot less than I get to go. I get to play video games anytime I want, right? So they can only drive them in the summer when it's not raining or whatever, right? So
yeah, I think you were right with what you were saying about the kind of slightly crappy aspect to some parts of this hobby. But what I find is that in a meeting like this, at least we're all like-minded, because it's a very retro computing is a very difficult hobby to explain to people who aren't into it what the attraction or the appeal is, because you just sound a bit kind of, you know, it doesn't even make sense to me sometimes.
Well, I came over to my house and it's all the that I was talking about. He says, what the hell do you know that crap? Because I love it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't understand it. He doesn't know because he never grew up with that.
Well, one of the things that always amazes me is that the pioneers in the industry, the people who made the old software, who made the old hardware, and then sort of fell out of it and got into a different career, and after all these years, they had no idea this was going on. And you call them up and say, hey, could we interview? And they're like, why would you want to interview me?
Yeah.
And you do, and some of them start to get back into it again. And
It's just like, you know, you got Rick, who literally recreated a game that he wrote, what, 20 years ago? In 6 months, maybe, something like that?
Yeah.
To me, that is just mind-boggling. He's
Yes.
just like, yeah, whatever, like, it's no big deal to him, but it's just, it is. It's just amazing, yeah.
Yeah, well, we hit him with a 1-2 punch. Steve kind of got him out and talked to him, and then we waited a little while, and then we had him on us, and we talked to him. And we said, you know, we got this Tandy assembly thing going, you know.
It's kind of like dating your friend's ex. There's
Yeah.
a cooling off there.
So he didn't know what hit him, but all of a sudden he was back in the game, you know.
Yeah. I just find like having met a lot of you guys now, it's just like we're just all normal people, but some of us do extraordinary things. Like it's extraordinary to other people, but not necessarily to that person. You know, which is strange, but it's just what it is. You know.
To add to that, I think one of the big pieces around this is, and one of the reasons why I came here is, that, you know, this is something that we share. We're all equally passionate about this. And there's inherent camaraderie there. So I think I'm not alone when, you know, I say that this is, you know, this platform, you know, from back in the 80s, kind of guided and made me who I am today to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I don't feel that I'd be working in the field that I'm working in. I don't feel that I have the skills that I have that I'm very proud of, and I think everybody shares that common bond. So, you know, having that inherent camaraderie with everyone and finally meeting people and putting, you know, the faces to the names and hearing, you know, all the stories on the podcast. So, Coco Crew, the Floppy Days, and Trash Talk, and Steven's new one, which is great, weekly. It's awesome. So putting all that together and having the ability to share that first Tandy assembly and on the 40th anniversary, basically, of
Perfect.
it's something special. So.
You know, there's no better place to learn and talk about floppies than on Steve's podcast.
We have some spin-off shows coming. So, Floppy Talk is going to be a 24-hour day channel. Floppies all the time.
That'll be 5 days at lab, right?
And
we will cassette talk too.
Cassette talk is coming. See, David's asking price has gone up considerably.
Show it, just takes much longer. Well, we have the slower show, though, you know.
What's that?
A Bitbanger show, you know.
A Bitbanger show.
Yeah. Well, you gotta watch the X-rating on that.
It's great there's so much content to waste your time on now.
Makes for driving great.
I was a kid, teenager, when I had Coco in the 80s, and I felt that you felt like you were not only part of something, but you felt like you were pretty well informed because you had things like the Rainbow magazine. So even though I didn't understand hardware or circuits or soldering or assembly, I felt like I understood what the machine was about. I felt like I understand what people were doing with this machine. I felt fairly well informed, and I had a Coco for 7 years. And so I lived every day of my life this thing, and I thought I knew a lot. When I started doing YouTube, and I started finding out about Boise's book and the Coco Crew podcast and all these things, I'm like, there's so much I didn't know. I learned more in my first 6 months of listening to the Coco Crew and reading the book and being involved in Facebook. I learned more in 6 months than I learned in 7 years of having the actual machine when it was a current thing. You learn so much. The Boise and Bill's book, if you guys not aware of it, Coco, The Colorful History of Tandy's Underdog Computer, by Boise Pete and Bill DeJudas, shameful plug right there. Great book about the color computer and Tandy and Radio Shack and the industry and the history. There were so many things to learn.
It's interesting. The common theme is always as cheap as possible. Like, that was always the defining his book, and then the talk today is like that is always the defining.
And it seems like that was kind of the undoing.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at how many things were innovators for the time, Tandy, Radio Shack was one of the biggest innovators in technology. And look at like the Palm Pilot. an innovator in a PDA. Look at the BlackBerry, one of the first smartphones. These innovators, but where are they now? Because they zagged when they should have zigged, and somebody else just carried forward. You know, Apple made everything pretty much irrelevant. It's amazing how what could have been, and you think about that. And while you can't change what could have been, you at least can appreciate what was. And now we're at a point where it's not only what was, but what can we add to that now? And you look at what everybody here is doing with their hardware projects. It's amazing to me, because I've never understood circuitry or hardware. So now all these things I'm learning about with the Arduinos and the FPGAs, and the fact that we can literally create hardware, virtual hardware, that's real hardware. It's blows my mind. You know, so it's like
this is what I like about this group, because they're rectifying all the wrongs that Tandy did with the new hardware that's coming out, where Tandy took a shortcut when they shouldn't have, and cheapened the computer. These guys are putting things out there to fix that and make it what it could have been and should have been.
Right.
And it's really cool.
There's not many things you can say now. If I had to do it all over again, what would I have done? With retro, people are doing that. You look at all these projects of the software that's being developed now that could have been developed. The fact that I'm running Hackman on my Coco, and I can run Donkey Kong on my Coco, and that these machines were capable of running these things that nobody did.
Well, it's interesting when you take money out of the equation and go to passion.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I understand that some of it is you just had to crank these things out. But,
or running a fully interrupt-driven multitasking operating system on that toy computer, color
and
computer.
what's that called? It's absolutely amazing to me, and I continue to be inspired by it. I think what people are doing are inspiring other people, and I don't have the graph of where things were 3 years ago, but in the 2.5 years I've been watching this, I've seen that graph grow in hardware and software and community engagement and involvement, and it just seems like it's rising. And if we could make this a stock, I say buy 1,000 shares right now, because it's just like, this is Apple stock right now with the retro enthusiasm is doing.
But you see, last month I was in a group, they was talking, and the speaker was talking about containers and how they're used, and I'm thinking, the light went on, this is not new. We were doing this with the color computer. Everything, code reentrant, okay? If you want to run more than one iterate, fine. You start another session, but the code's already in there from the first session. All it does is keep track of what changes are made, and that's what containers are. And that's not new.
Well, yeah, the community investment, the community work seems to have or at least the ones what we've been doing. We're picking the right things. I think we're getting a good return on investment. We're getting a higher than $1 return on every dollar we put into it, at least right now. Now, I don't know, are we just getting lucky or what? Are we just doing the right thing, or is it just the right time? I don't know. I hope we can keep it going. But like you said, there was a time when it kind of felt like things were diminishing. The hobby kind of felt like maybe it was disappearing, or at least shrinking into a smaller ball than what it was. And that's why I wanted to put some effort into stuff, and I wanted to document projects and talk more publicly, partly just because I want to make sure that guys that have too many people that come over and say, why the hell do you have a room full of this stuff, have some validation that you're not the only one, right? And so it feels good to know, hey, I'm not the only guy that likes this stuff. Hey, I did this, maybe there's somebody I can show it to. And you do that, right, and somebody else gets the same feeling. It's like, well, hey, I did this, and it's kind of like that, but it's a little different. What do you think, And so it kind of builds a community, and I think it helps everyone grow. Everyone feels a little better, it has a little more fun. And, these projects that you do in the community that, sure, they're just dumb competing projects or whatever, right? But if they satisfy your need to learn something, or your need to prove to yourself that you can do something or whatever, it makes you a better person, it makes you a happier person. Maybe it improves your life. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it improves your home life. Maybe it improves your wife's outlook on things, right? I think there is some good to be had in the world just by, enjoying your hobby. And like I said, You know, it's no different than spending time out in the garage with the grease all over you. At least you can, you know, you can go and eat a sandwich without having to wash your hands.
To me, the important thing still is that, you know, no matter what we build and design, new hardware, you know, I do that, Ian does that, a lot of people do that. New software, new approaches. You're out in your car, in your garage, tinkering with your original car. You're still using your old computer, just like you're still using your old Mustang or whatever. Sure, you had a turbocharger or whatever.
Sure.
You're still at that keyboard that you bought, or your dad bought you back in 1978 or whatever. We haven't changed that. We're just making it so you can use it more efficiently and have more fun with it, and not have to scream at your cassette player all the time or whatever.
Yeah. But even if you pull the steering wheel and replace it with a chain link circle, you still got more in common with the other guy that's got the same car with the stock steering wheel. You know, you're still driving the same car. You know what I mean? And you're not totally off on your own. I don't know. You're not a weirdo. Welcome to the club.
Well, I think too, you hit on the fact that, and that's what's attractive for me, is you never stop learning about it. And it's kind of like, wow, I never, you know, I had that computer back then, but I really didn't know everything about it, or there was a lot left to learn before I had to move on to something else. And you come back to it, it's like, now I got a second chance. I can come back and really spend some time on this, and you know, and now with the internet, of course, we've got all the manuals at our fingertips. Software we could never have afforded at the time, and you know, it just really lets you unleash it and experience the things you never got to, you know, originally. So it's about the experience too. Just like, you know, you didn't get to ride in that Mustang, but you can now because you can.
I think you guys hit on a good point though about the hobby is peaking all across all different computer lines, and I think it really is to do with timing, because people like me, who when these were out were 6, 8, 10, are now in the peak of our careers. We have some money and some time that we can do with this. So in the last year and a half, I've probably bought 15 or 20 different retro computers of all different types. Both the ones I did have access to when I was young, as well as ones I drooled over at the electronics store, but could never have afforded. And
now you can.
That's matched up at the same time with modern hardware that says, I can use an SD card instead of a floppy disk, and I can get a network card for some of the computers and plug it into my network and transfer files. And we're at a really special place right now, and I hope it's not the peak because I want more to come.
Yeah.
But it really kind of could be, because there's so much good out there right now.
We're living our childhood dreams.
Yeah.
All these machines we drooled over in magazines. You know, most
Well,
of them are
and
affordable.
better, really. I mean, I put a 16 megahertz accelerator in my Apple IIe. That was not something that could have existed in the 1980s.
Well, where can you go to get a Mustang in an auction for $5?
You're not going to want to drive that car.
That's
right.
Sure. It's all about quality.
That'll be a project.
Okay, keep that back there for
That Mustang will be the equivalent of mounting a joystick in the top of your Coco case.
Hey, somebody bought that. Somebody
You know, I had to look at that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I had to look at that color computer with the joystick in the top. I had a close look at it because I bought it. It's so badly done. It doesn't actually have a fire button anywhere. I look all over
I
it.
asked that when I first saw it. Is there a fire button? They're like,
no, that's a different one.
I think it's from a school, just from the markings on it.
Well, that's one way to dissuade the kids from
they're
playing games. Just take away the fire button.
Well, the joystick's not going to walk home by itself either.
Yeah.
The pacifist joystick.
But it's not a Coco with a joystick in it, right?
How did you
It's a
decide, or
joystick
how
shaped
did
like
you
a
get
Coco.
together and say, we're going to make this thing reality? Was it a concept, an idea?
This event?
Yeah.
18 months ago,
Yeah.
we launched into this. And we've been talking about it for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, we've been kicking it around for a while, and you know, I've been stopping in this area on the way to go to Chicago for Coco Fest for 6 years, something like that. I usually would stop a little closer to Dayton. And last year I drove out not only Coco Fest, but also the VCF Midwest in Chicago. And I decided to just check the maps a little bit closer or whatever. And I discovered that this was closer to halfway for me right here. Turns out it also would be like halfway if I were to go to Dion's house. I thought, well, I got to check that place out. You know what I mean? And so I checked it out and just thought, you know, it's a good location. It's a kind of a small town, but there's stuff there. There's this hotel with all these conference facilities or whatever. Like I said, we'd already been kicking it around, but kind of like I just figured eventually if I did it, I'd like just pick a spot near my house or whatever. But you know, I didn't want to do it all myself. I wanted a team or whatever. So I mentioned this place, thought it was cool. Turns out Mike lives a couple of hours away, so he's a lot closer, and he kind of picked up the ball and ran with it. And so like, well, I already kind of started talking about this. Now Mike's talking about it. I guess I got to keep talking too. And we dragged Neil in, and then like I said, a little later, not much later, but a little later, we kind of reached out to the trash talkers, and they were amenable to the idea, and so we started having meetings on a monthly basis. Yeah.
And I had been independently thinking about starting a TRS 80 only event
There you
after
go.
success of our podcast.
Cool.
And it was fortuitous timing that you guys brought it up about the same time. It's perfect.
Yeah, I think that was brought up. It's on YouTube. We had a Google Hangout.
Yeah.
Was it a year ago? And it turned out it was so many people trying to watch that thing. It sort of put the idea, I think, to the two groups that it was just like, yeah, maybe a real in-person event could succeed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of people tuning into that podcast, and it's all good feedback.
What strikes me about this gathering is there's this energy here that I did not see in any of the Coco Fest. And I started going to Coco Fest in 2000 with the Pin Fest, put on by Ron Bowl.
Did you see the pamphlet I got? At the end of the auction at Pin Fest 2000? Sorry.
I missed that. But that's what astounded me here was the excitement and the energy and the participation. That blew me away too. There's a lot of people here. You know, I'm just scouting it out. I mean, I would have bought a table if I, but I didn't. I came down to see. I found out about this Coco Fest.
Yeah.
So.
Now you know.
Yeah. And my first computer was a color computer, 64K, Coco 2. And I bought it because I just graduated from a programming degree and I wanted to keep my hand in because halfway through that degree I decided I did not want to be a programmer for Ohio Edison. And so I stayed as an operator, but I didn't want to lose everything, so I bought a color computer and learned how to make databases and everything else off it. But that's the reason I'm here.
Are you close by to the event? You're in Ohio, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you far from here?
I live in the Akron area.
Oh, okay.
So it took me about 4 or 5 hours to get down here because I center punched Columbus during the height of rush hour.
Yeah.
So I had my GoPro going in case I had an altercation.
Anybody else want to chime in on what kind of motivated you to come here, or what your feelings are, experiences, or kind of impressions of the event so far?
Anybody not like something about this?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
There's a complaint department right here.
The 30 hours in coach is a bit too much.
So, yeah, anybody who's going to complain about how long it took to get here has got nothing on that, right? Anybody who wants to say it's just too hard to get there,
yeah, just send them my way, I'll lecture them.
And Steve's being modest because we all saw him live stream his way for 2 days and it's from Florida.
It's impressive to have this many people here. And you could look at, even like Coco Fest. I've been to 2 Coco Fests, and the fact that there's been like 70 people at Coco Fest, that's a tremendous amount of people to show up. Because you got to figure there is, everybody said, well, at different times of year it's not good for me, and then there's the expense of traveling and the hotels, and so when you get 70 people to show up that on their nickel and taking their time and energy to get here, that is significant. Regardless that there might be 1,000 people in the community, the fact that you got close to 10% of them to go out of their way to take place in an event, I think is a very respectable and impressive number of doing that. So again, I know I'm just a kid in a candy store, and I have been for a while. So, but I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm just so excited that there's so many other people here too. And I was just everything you guys were saying when we were over there having dinner at the wing place, and I'm watching all of these freaking people getting excited over college football, not having a clue what the hell they're so happy about. That's probably how they feel about me. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever. What are you watching? What is this football thing? So it's just like a show. Everybody's passionate about something.
They throw a Radio Shack commercial up on screen. Everybody.
Yeah, that's what it's like. You don't walk in with your badges on.
Who are these people? These crazy. I went to the Longhouse Steakhouse, and one woman looks at She thought I was a geek because
That's all right. We do too, Jay.
I think that's pretty clear if you're in this room. You're in.
No judgment.
You have a comment?
I'm from Michigan. I had a 4-hour plus drive to get here, and I'm not a computer nerd like what I would, and that's a good term. But for me, it was a nostalgia trip. A lot of guys noticed I got Radio Shack stuff on. And, this is a little pin that we used to give out to people that would buy a Radio Shack, because we used to have get negative things about because Commodore pets, so we give people these little ribbon that's original from the store.
We'll give me $5.
Anyway, I was a Radio Shack store manager when Don French was down in Texas, so when I saw his name, I just wanted to come and meet him, type of thing. And I have a small collection myself, and my brothers too are in electronics, and so I kind of curious about the value, and I just want to see. Every now and then I get into. I'm in some of the discussion groups as a silent observer online because I really don't get into when the guys talking about interrupts this and that stuff, and I was I did some programming, and to me it was a product that I would sell and that I would help customers use it, but I didn't get into the technical aspect of it. But so I guess it was more of a nostalgia type of thing for me to come down and then see what kind of is going on, things like, and just kind of see what kind of value there is on certain things that I might have that people might want to buy later on. But so it's kind of interesting. I didn't know what to expect. You guys, I've known of I've heard of Coco Fest, but I didn't know how big the community was out there. The internet can either can magnify the importance of something, or it can be diminished because of the internet. And you might not know exactly how much personal interest there is in something, but it's great that you guys took the time to do this. I'm going to claim the fame in Michigan is that I sold the very first TRS-80 in the state of Michigan. My funny story is that they were so hard to get for a while. I would tell people, they come in the store saying, I want a TRS-80, I want the 16K level 2, they were $999, and you had a 3 to 4 week wait if you ordered them as a store manager. So I'd say, if you pay for it right now, I'll have it for you tomorrow. And then I'd go home and box mine up. And I'd bring it to the store, and I'd deliver it to the guy, and then I already tested it for you. I tell him, a couple weeks old because the next one, I have it in the pipeline, I have one already ordered, and as soon as I had a couple more stacked up in the store, I'd take one home so I could keep playing it, because I'd have to debug programs for people myself, because there was no experts, and I'd been trained in Fortran at U of M. I know that might not be a good word here, but at the University of Michigan, and so it was easy for me to learn BASIC and convert it over, and so that's what my job was debugging software for my customers.
That was the first language
I
learned in Fortran.
Yeah, you couldn't buy anything, and that's what people, like it was so great, Don said that in French, and I don't know, the Radio Shack, the mentality in Texas was that we're not going to sell these. We'll just make them because it's to show that we're innovative. I heard that from Charles Tandy myself, personally. And so it was kind of interesting that like people would buy it and just say, you'd say, why are you buying this? And I said, well, because I just want a computer. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I just want it.
A whole new field.
And it was just a whole new thing. It was incredible. And a lot of Radio Shack managers couldn't get their handles around, their grasp around back then. And so there was only a few stores out of maybe 75 stores in the state of Michigan. There was only like 6 or 7 managers that really grasped what it was. And so if somebody came into your store and asked, well, I want a disk drive for my computer or whatever, you'd say, well, I don't know anything about that. And you say, well, anybody do it? Well, there's a guy in Jackson, Michigan that knows a lot. So I also have people that come in from Holland, Michigan and Port Huron, Michigan, driving down there to get their stuff, and they have questions, spend an afternoon at the store on a whole week. Kind of, it'd be like Coco, for like, it'd be like a Tandy assembly convention on the weekends. People would come in because I'd be there, and then I'd be answering questions and showing them how to hook things up and debugging software, and I had people lined up at the store, and that's how I retired early, so. It was interesting.
I have a question for you as a Radio Shack former employee. Because something we toyed about, but not seriously, was having this event in Fort Worth. Would there be any value to that?
Not for me. I mean, certainly. A 4.5-hour drive I could justify, but Texas, I mean, I wouldn't, for me anyway, I wouldn't, you know, obviously the travel time for someone that's going to come from Australia wouldn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah, where
you need to have it in New Orleans.
I also mentioned before to Peter that, you know, maybe the Warwick Hotel in New York would be a good place to have.
That'd be a great place.
Yeah, that would.
Yeah. I got a couple of questions for you about the Tandy store that you managed, or the Radio Shack. They called it Tandy.
Well, that was Tandy Corporation, because they owned a lot of different. Tandy Leather was, of course, his original Charles's first successful operation.
That's right. So was yours a general product store or a computer center?
Well, Don knows this type. I was an invisible type of a store, because we know that there was the company store in the major market areas, and then you had all the franchise dealers in the minor, like the satellite areas. And those guys could sell Sony as well as Radio Shack. They could sell whatever they wanted.
Okay, yeah. And
that was just a franchisee that could sell the Radio Shack product. And I was one of 600 managers within the chain, the company-owned chain called, the acronym was SMIA, and it was a special manager incentive agreement. And we put up half the capital for the merchandise in the store. And then I had a contract. They helped, so let's say if I wanted $100,000 worth of wholesale inventory in the store, they had to have $50,000 of my money as a security deposit, so I wouldn't just run off.
Okay.
But I reported, just like there were 2 other Radio Shacks in Jackson company-owned stores, and I was the 3rd one. So I reported all my sales through Radio Shack as a company store, but I had a lot of leverage and leeway, so I was kind of a joint venture type of thing. But my pay was totally different, and that's what my contract, and that's what was really different, is that each store generated a monthly P&L for those that had been Radio Shack employees. Every store had its own profit and loss statement. And so, and a normal manager would get, and employees would get salaries or hourly, and then they have a bonus. A manager would get a bonus. Well, I didn't have any paycheck. I had no guaranteed pay at all. What I did is that on your P&L, when you generated your adjusted gross profit, based on a standard cost of goods, which Radio Shack had established, you had your profit for the month, and then we split the profit 50-50, and then we had certain expenses. Radio Shack paid 100% of the lease. I paid all of the payroll. And then there were some expenses like advertising that we split 50-50. Whatever was left over on the left column, Radio Shack kept. That was their profit for my store. Everything on the right-hand column at the end of the month was my profit, or my pay. Okay. So I had 12 paychecks a year. And then at the end of the year, when we did our final inventory, and whether you had an inventory gain because you had more inventory left over at the end of the year that you're supposed to or less, I would get 50% of that. So that was my 13th paycheck. And I was telling Don a funny story about, of course, your January paycheck would be huge because your December sales were so big. And you'd have, in your last 2 weeks of payroll, where you're paying all the commission that the salespeople didn't show up in December, that showed up in January. So you'd have this huge paycheck that would show up on January 14th. Then the February paycheck would reflect your January sales, and in the wintertime in Michigan, you can have some bad weather, and then you don't have nearly the kind of sales. And then your last 2 weeks of payroll, huge payroll bill showed up in January. And I had a paycheck for February once where we had a big snowstorm, so we were closed the town was shut down for 4 days. And so the sales for the month were terrible. Then I had all these expenses from December that showed up, and I had a paycheck for 18 cents. That was for the whole month. And unfortunately, I had saved my December pay, my January paycheck. I hadn't spent it all, but I never cashed it. I actually have a photo. I put it in a plaque. I just cashed it, and I kept all my old name tags from Radio Shack. I've got a little plaque that I made. So I retired after 28 years. I sold my store back into the Radio Shack, basically, and then I retired in 2000.
It sounds like a complicated arrangement with that thing, but obviously it worked because
it wasn't all that complicated once you understood. Everything was defined in the contract.
Yeah.
There were certain expense accounts that were 100% Radio Shack's responsibility. They were the fixed expenses, things that I had no control over, and then things that I had control, like postage, my heating and air conditioning, payroll. I paid all those on my share, and then. But again, and Charles Tandy said he wished every Radio Shack company store could have been an SMIA because we all had vested interest, and we didn't need a district manager. In fact, most of my not all, but many of my district managers that I worked for were really annoyed because I made a lot more money than they did.
Wow.
And we were $1 million store, and plus, back then in the computers, when the computers came in, Don was a little unfair to CBs because we kept selling CBs for a long time, and there were other product lines that we did really well, but the computers, when you had a 50% margin off, if anybody, Dell or any of the modern computer makers could think of a 50% margin or even 15% margin, they would like go, they would go. We had 50% margin on a $999 computer, so you bet I would sell them my one from home. As I'm making $500 on gross margin on that by taking it back to the store and selling it every time I did that.
So just two more questions. So did head office restrict the amount of shelf space you could allocate to the computer equipment?
Actually, not. Well, each store was so different in its layout. It isn't like a Menard. If you go into like a Menard's hardware store or like a Lowe's, they're all laid out the same. Corporate does that. But our stores were so different in size, and it varied. You had quite a bit of leeway based on your footprint of your store and what kind of volume you were doing. I think that was pretty much. I don't recall ever getting anything from Fort Worth. I would get some suggestions from my district manager, but other than that, I was on my own.
Yeah, because I just would think that it would be too easy to fall into the habit of just filling the place with the stuff that was selling. So you'd end up with 50% computers, 30% CB radios, and
we had certain displays that were like all the car stereos were on a certain display, and so there was certain square footage that you just had to take up for all the pegged items in the store. There were maybe 1,500 parts that we carried, and what's weird is that a lot of the catalog numbers and my wholesale costs are still in my head. That's the crazy thing. And I was talking to the last Radio Shack as it was closing, because I had my own theory about what Radio Shack, why they failed. And it was because it's not because they couldn't, but somebody or a group of people in Texas chose not to compete with the internet. They actively chose not to. They had margins to compete. And one of my best examples was if you bought a stereo back then, you had a little dipole, the T antenna.
Yeah.
Okay, Radio Shack catalog number 42-2385. We used to pay 75 cents and sell them for $2.99. Okay, so for a small part, that's typical, like that. Well, so, and I don't know if any of you guys went into Radio Shack in the last 10 years, but it would annoy the hell out of me, because, excuse my language on the podcast, but I would feel like they had their marketing choice that they made was, well, we aren't going to drop our prices to compete with what you can get on the internet, so if they absolutely have to have it today, we're going to rake them over the coals to get that. And you go in there one time and you'd say, gee, whatever, and then you'd never go back. You'd pay the price because you had to have it today, but because in my example, so there's an example, 42-20-35, that dipole antenna on the wall. And you look up the wholesale costs, because we could look up the wholesale costs on our terminals, and I said, and it was 79 cents, so in 17 years, the wholesale costs have gone up 4 cents. What do you think the price of that dipole antenna on the wall was now? It was $2.99 when I retired.
$15.
He was close, $12.99. $12.99, and it had gone up 4 cents. I said, well, I probably sold more in 6 months of my little Radio Shack store in Jackson, Michigan. I probably sold more of those with a $2.25 markup than all of corporate Radio Shack sold last year at $12.99. And so I'd much rather sell a whole ton of something at a 40% markup than zero of something with 100% markup.
So were you allowed, like in your store, to put the stuff cheaper, or do you have to stick with
that's
that price?
That's a good question. No, I was a company-owned store, so I had to follow the advertised price. But when we did put together, when we sold our other big item that we sold in the store was the stereo systems back then. You know, we had separate components on audio and everything like that.
Right.
So we have to put together package prices. If people came in, they wanted loudspeakers and a turntable and a cassette deck and a receiver and this and that, equalizer. We could put together package prices, TV antennas, all that stuff had real gross margin. We could put a discount. We could put a package price. I could compete on package prices. I could discount that. But I had a dealer store, a franchisee that was literally 12 miles from me that would sell computers for a couple $100 less than me. And then people would come in my store, hey Alan, I need help with my software. And I said, well, you have to go back out to Brooklyn, Michigan, and that's where MIS is, Michigan Speedway. And so you have to go back to that dealer where you bought it from. Well, but you're a Radio Shack store. And I said, if there's something defective with your computer, I'll fix it, you know, under warranty, but I'm not going to spend my time debugging your software. That's why people come in here and pay the price that's in the catalog.
You got the service.
My personal service, and they just look at me like, and I was like, this is your third computer, you know, you already bought 2 computers from me, and you decided to spend a couple $100 less. We'll drive 20 minutes to spend a couple $100 less on your third computer. Do you want me to debug the software on that one?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No.
So I'd be polite, but I just would, it's not worth my time.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are some good questions that a lot of people have thought about, but yeah. So we were a company store, and but Charles really wanted to do that, but he didn't survive, unfortunately. One thing he left out, he talked about how he always had a cigar, but on all the social activities that I ever saw him at, was on the other hand, he had a scotch on the rocks. That was his combination. It was a cigar on one hand, scotch on the other. And what I had heard, I don't know if Don would. If he remembers or not, but what I heard, it was about 8 a.m. that he had a heart attack and died, but he had been out all night long in a poker game, and then just got home from the all-nighter. But that would have been the Charles Tandy that I knew, and I'm not saying that in a bad way. That was just the Texas Charles Tandy that I knew.
Cool.
Yeah, I was going to comment about the reason franchises sold a lot cheaper, especially in the early days, is they would buy the minimum computer configuration, and then they would put the third-party aftermarket parts themselves. They did a lot with the Model 3s, and a lot of times the customer would do the mail order, it would break, they would take it to the computer center, and they would expect warranty work, and we would open it up and say, we're sorry, we can't. It's not ours.
Yeah.
And they would get all upset about it. And the biggest abuser of that was a place called Merrimack Industries in Katy, Texas. They would buy literally thousands of the 4K Model 3s. I believe it was the 261060s. And they didn't, but the other franchisees would buy them up, and other mom and pop stores would put their own parts in there.
Well, speaking of Radio Shack and his past, maybe his future, did everyone see the big news about Adafruit has bought the Radio Shack brand?
Oh, is that true?
Adafruit.
Who?
Adafruit. Adafruit.
Adafruit?
Yeah, Arduino.
ADA Fruit. Yeah.
Who's that?
Well, if you don't know, you won't care. So.
He cares now, though.
Yeah, anyway, good news, bad news? What do you think? I think it's good news.
Well, someone else mentioned that they're opening up franchisees, you can go into any location now. So before the franchisees. Well, I was just talking to, maybe it was Don French, or another Radio Shack employee. We were all talking together outside, and that they've opened up the franchisee program to anywhere, so you can go into New York City and put a franchisee in that, just to get outlets. In the old days, it was if you were in a high density urban area, it was company only. You couldn't franchisee, couldn't get a dealership in a urban area.
That means there's a possible resurgence of Radio Shack stores, or just a brand or product?
Well, I don't know that much about the details, but it sounds cool that it could invigorate the brand, and if Radio Shack does come back, it sounds like it'll be more likely to be the kind of maker slash hobbyist, whatever kind of outlet than like just another Circuit City or whatever.
That's one thing. I did have one other thing about. You heard Don French? He talked about Lou Kornfeld. You guys remember that name? Lou Kornfeld was the president for a long time. But Bernie Appel. Did you guys know who Bernie Appel was?
Yeah.
He was a real boisterous guy, and he also knew who I was. And I would call him every now and then to complain or to talk about a product. Like I said, the VCRs. The first year the VCRs came out, Bernie was convinced that it was a $600 boat anchor that was just going to sit in the store. And so the first Christmas came by and we had one of each model VCR is all we could get. And we had like dozens of people coming in and asking for them as a family gift Christmas present, and I had none to sell. So it was like, oh. And when radio control toys first started coming out, all you could get was like these little $10 or $15 simple cars. And yet I was going to the hobby shop and I could see these great, it wasn't digital yet, but I mean some really nice high-tech stuff. And we were already selling $200 telephones, and we're getting, we had $1,000 computers and stuff like that. So I was telling Bernie, how come we aren't getting into some sophisticated radio control cars that we can change the tires, you can replace the motors, some $150, $200 things. He says, well, what do you think are some kind of a hobby shop? And I looked at him and said,
yeah.
What are these $1,500 peg items, 1,500 pegs I got on my, oh yeah, we are. I couldn't believe this guy, he had no vision at all, it was amazing. We fought, it wasn't just computers that we fought these guys on, and VCRs, it was like one thing after another, we just couldn't get Bernie to get into the product, and I said, oh man, we were just losing it, because we could have a nice little product line there with some $200 RC cars and some tires and stuff.
I still have those 2 pickup trucks that were radio controlled that I bought my boys. They still work?
Yeah. Ray Arrows was a real popular. We finally got into some. It took a long time, but we ended up with some successful things. But there were just some products lines that we just missed. We were followers, unfortunately, and after that's true. And that was really frustrating for us in the field, in the trenches.
I was going to say that one thing Adafruit has that harkens back to the Radio Shack days is the margins. I like Adafruit, they have a great site, lots of tutorials, but you definitely pay for your hardware there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe that that they can make money with a manufacturing facility in Manhattan. That's what they have, though, and it's working for them. So if anybody can make it successful, it seems like somebody with that kind of
they can't do
possibility.
Worse
yeah, they can't do any worse. Yeah, exactly.
Well, you gotta stop and think. If they're in Manhattan, what's expensive to us is cheap to them.
Anybody else want to talk about what got you here, or what you liked about being here, how you enjoyed the assembly so far?
Well, I got one last thing to say. I missed the golden age of aviation. I'm glad I got to live through the golden age of computers.
There you go.
I'll jump in. So I've been, I cut my teeth on Model 1, Model 3 back in the day, little kid, and my dad used to joke that I helped sell the computers in the Radio Shack store because I'd go there and hang out. I'm sure I'm not the only one either, because kids kind of picked up on this stuff and saw what was going on at the time. But and I've been kind of active in the vintage computing, and I've gone to some festivals, and I've worked on emulators for quite a long time. But and I knew the Coco community was fairly active, but I don't, for whatever reason, I never really kind of noticed that. Hey, what happened to the Z80-based TRS-80s? And then I discovered the TRS-80 Trash Talk podcast, and just recently started listening to that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it really hits close to home, because I learned everything. I'm an electrical engineer now, and the whole course of my life changed because of the influence of all that stuff. And I'm from Michigan, and when I saw you guys were setting up shop in Ohio for the first one, okay, I have to be here for that one. So that's the reason why I came, and I'm glad I did. So maybe next year I'll load up my minivan full of TRS-80s and set up a table here. So.
What outlet do you think you learned about Tandy assembly from? Is it from listening to the podcast that you heard?
It was I think it was originally from the podcast, and then they were talking about having one,
but I don't think you originally said where. And then I was thinking to myself, oh, am I going to be able to fit it in? And then when it came out that it was Ohio, it went right on the calendar there. So
you have to promote something. There's got to be ways to promote. It doesn't matter what the event is or how good it is if you can't get the word out.
Right.
And that's I suspect this was going to be huge because you know, the Coco crew got me wanting to go to Coco Fest. I'd never been to one, but when you hear somebody talking about it every month, month after month after month, your interest is peaked. And that was one podcast promoting one event. When you've got 3 podcasts now, Floppy Days, Trash Talkers, and the Coco crew, and then I jumped on too. You got a lot of bullhorns now in the air. That definitely helps, and it's an almost necessary thing, I think, to raise that awareness. And obviously it was a success by looking at everybody here. So.
Well, to quote somebody, we're going through our second childhood.
Yeah.
Well, the social media thing helped a lot too. I have a friend who I only ever talk to them on Facebook, but there's somebody who, you know, I worked with 20 years ago, and they cut their teeth on a Model 3 the same as I did. They wrote their own basic extensions, so, you know, I had lengthy conversations about it. I haven't seen the guy in 25 years, and but, you know, he was here. He's not here tonight. He was here earlier, and he'll be back. But it was really great to, you know, this actually is bringing together people who, you know, we don't normally get to talk or see each other. But I told him about Tandy Assembly the first day. He was already listening to the podcast, but he didn't know about the Tandy Assembly thing, and so just been catching up and talking about TRS-80s all day. So
it's great to hear that the podcast had that kind of influence on me, because the whole reason I started the podcast was selfish, because I didn't have anybody else to talk to.
Yeah.
I try to talk to your wife about the TRS-80s.
I have to agree. But yeah, and I have another friend who I met in high school, and I was a freshman, he was a senior, and but we met because we both had TRS-80s, and our high school was good enough to teach an assembly language ZA class, and so we met through that. And and then he later worked at a Radio Shack store, and I hung out there, you know, just to do that during the summer. So I'll bring him next year when you guys do the assembly again.
I came to ask Don French about the Tandy 10. No, seriously. You know, I've had all kinds of different computers. Back in the day, I had color computers. I ran a Coco VBS at one point. ZX81s, PC Juniors, went through all those. And then there were a number of years where I didn't get involved in computers at all, you know, vintage computers at all. And then I wanted to relive my childhood. So I started by getting, you know, I had that one when I was a kid, I had that one when I was a kid, played with them. And then I discovered that the internet could lead me to some pretty wild rides. I ended up on Ira's Gold Clang's Trash 80 site, TRS-80 site. And this was back when you could download manuals, download software. So even though I had no real roots in the Model 1, 3, 4, I could get the manuals and learn about the hardware, and then I'd go out and, you know, get on Kijiji and find the computers and put them together and build them up. And then I started getting interested in the Model 2, 12, 16, that line of business computers, because back in the day I'd go into the computer center, Radio Shack computer centers, and that was a separate room I couldn't really go into, and there were priests in there and brown binders on the walls, and even the lights were dimmer.
They don't let stupid kids in there either.
They didn't let the kids in there, right? and so now suddenly I could explore those computers. The manuals are all out there. You know, Peter has been very helpful with gathering some of the manuals and software together.
He's a lot nicer than he seems, isn't he?
and so that was a whole other wild ride, right? And you know, you could get into Xenix and 68,000 processors, and so it's about exploration and fun.
Very cool. So here, I got a question for the room. You know, one of the biggest problems we had in the 70s and the 80s was software piracy, and that probably hurt a lot of things, and now most of us are at the point now where we can afford to pay for things. So what is everybody's philosophy right now on spending money on software in the 21st century, especially for an old thing? Is everybody kind of okay with ponying up, you know, $20, $40 for a new brew application for an old system? Anybody still think it was free then, it should be free now? What are you guys' thoughts on spending money on software today?
So I actually like supporting the devs that are still doing the work. So it's nice to see people still building new software for it. And as long as the prices aren't too crazy, yeah, I've got money now, I'll spend it. I didn't do a ton of piracy back in the day because growing up in Montana, there wasn't somebody down the street that had something to copy in the first place.
Hey, did you know David Ladd?
And so, yeah, I think it's good. If I write any software, it's probably just going to go up for free, but I don't see any problem with devs wanting to recoup some money for the time they spend on it.
I watch pirating kill the Amiga.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I campaigned against it.
Yeah, my thing is, I never control my voice isn't loud enough.
No, my thing is that I don't mind paying for it if it's well done, which what I've seen so far really has been. I'm really impressed. I mean, the thing I got today with Rick's bomb threat, and I picked up some John's software too. It's just really well done. But the other thing too is it's kind of like he said. I don't mind. Like, you guys are doing this. Yeah, you're gonna make some money off of it. You want to recoup some costs, but you're doing it because you want to put this software out there. You really have a passion to do it, and I want to support that. Versus in the 80s and 90s, it was some company / corporation who was just trying to make a buck. So to me, that's really the difference. As far as the piracy piece of it. I mean, I'm not going to say that we didn't do it all the time when I was in 8th grade in our Apple lab, but nowadays it's one of those things where I want to support that. So.
All right. Very cool. That seems to be a fairly unanimous feeling about that.
I wish there was a way that we could license all the old software.
Yeah.
And not feel guilty, just settle that whole
In interviewing several of the authors that we've spoken to, I've said, well, have you considered maybe opening up PayPal on your website where people can make a donation? I call it like my Catholic guilt. I mean, if I could now pay for all the stuff I got for free now, I would have no problem doing that. And I guess most people are kind of like, no, it's okay, that's in the past. But it would be kind of neat if there was this, or it's an organization where let's take this money and let's pay it forward. Let's all contribute to something that's going to benefit mankind, or retro-kind at least. So.
Well, I'll go so far as to say if you get something that's shareware, I have a couple, like Total Commander, it's shareware.
Well,
and I still, every so often, will send that guy some money, just to encourage him to keep supporting it.
That's dope.
The other thing that comes into it, because people talk about abandonware and that kind of thing, and use that to justify a lot of what communities like this might do. But the piece of it that a lot of people, I kind of looked into it just because I was interested to see what it was and where it went. There's like a company might have made a piece of software, that company was bought, or the rights for that company was bought by another company and another company and another. So you could have this software embedded in some company's rights that they don't even know they own it, but they do. So to be able to ferret that out and get that out front would be probably a huge challenge in my estimation.
Going back to paying for newly developed software, the model I've seen that I really like is when an author is like, yeah, you can just go download this image and use my software, but if you want a box and all that other stuff that goes with it. And so with Popstar Pilot, buying that artifact was more important than buying the software on it, because you could get that other way. So I think for devs that are looking to do that, that might be a way to go, where you're like, yeah, everybody can have this software, but we have this premium experience that you can buy into, and it's a lot better.
Yeah, like the full package.
I know that Nox Archaeist is coming out with a new game for the Apple II that's going to be freely downloadable, but they have a Kickstarter out, and so they have a full art box that you can buy into with feelies like you would get back in the day. I think they're going to have a fabric map or something in there. So some of that stuff really makes it attractive to pay significant amounts. Like that box with the feelies is over $100, but it was a no-brainer for me to be, I want the whole thing I would have gotten back in the day, even though I know I could just go download the software.
If that business model works, just ask Red Hat. Fedora's free, but if you want the support, you get the Red Hat Executive or Enterprise.
Sure. It's yeah, that's a complicated subject. I don't think anybody want to delve into the depths of free software right now. But if you really want to talk about that stuff, catch me up by myself. We'll talk.
All right, so we can wrap it up in 5 minutes. Wrap it up. I mean, I definitely want to thank all the founders of Tandy Assembly for creating Tandy Assembly, and all the podcasters for creating this content that's helped inspire me and educate me. It's been very educational listening to these shows, and as well as entertaining and everything else. And obviously, thank you guys all for being here. Great show. Anybody got anything you want to say in the last 5 minutes?
I got a question for you. Did Irma hit you real hard?
What's that?
Did Irma hit you real hard?
Not me. But here's what we need to do. Okay, I'm going to count to 3, and we need to record this. There's 3 words we need to say together. And those 3 words are ease of use, okay? So when I say 3 in unison, we are all going to say ease of use. Can we all do that together? Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Ease of use.
All right, there we go.
Okay, now you have to explain that to the ZA folks.
So, ease of use has become the catchphrase to explain the OS 9 operating system.
Yeah.
And it's basically
Oh, thanks everybody. Let's see, it's 9 o'clock. Let's take a half-hour break to mingle and everything, and then the last thing we have scheduled for the evening is the Tandy Assembly quiz show. So we're gonna get 3 volunteers to be participants, and get set for the game show.
I bought some pizza and wings. Feel free. Go eat some. What? What? That's a wing. Yeah. Ease of
use. Ease of use.
Rockstar.
I don't know about this walking.
It's hard after a while, doesn't it? Yeah. See, I had the luxury of falling asleep.
Yeah, mine did too. I did it yesterday.
Okay.
It probably should. Nice idea.
I was thinking about that, but we
were all put off about the last